Hello there, and many thanks for joining us on the program, which brings you different expert perspectives on issues of national and international importance. I am Imoni Amarire. The report of the 2023 Open Budget Survey, otherwise known as OBS, conducted by the International Budget Partnership, IBP, was recently released. The OBS ranks countries according to their performance across three pillars: accountability in national budget processes, public participation, and oversight and transparency. It ranked Nigeria 92nd in fiscal transparency among 125 countries assessed globally. Now, according to the survey, Nigeria's performance in transparency, public participation, and institutional oversight was poor, resulting in the country's drop in ranking from 45 in 2021 to 92 in 2023. The survey results show that countries like Cameroon, Zimbabwe, Namibia, Zambia, Sierra Leone, and Benin Republic did comparatively better than Nigeria. The report gives the two major reasons for Nigeria's decline in ranking as: 1. Government's failure to publish in-year reports and mid-year reviews online, and 2. Lack of innovative public participation practices. Analysts say the latest report clearly underscores Nigeria's concerns about her fiscal management challenges and how public funds are raised and spent. Now, what is the larger implication of this ranking for the overall health of the Nigerian economy? What is required to improve the country's ranking moving forward? Well, these are the issues that we will be looking at on the program today as we take a closer look at this ranking by this international body. We have in the studio joining me two, for now, distinguished Nigerians, and of course a third will be joining us shortly. First, I have on my immediate left, Yinka Babalola. Yinka Babalola is a country manager, International Budget Partnership, Nigeria. Thank you so much, Yinka.
Thank you for having me
time
on
to
the
join
show.
us. We're also joined by Dr. Kennedy Iwundu. Dr. Iwundu is a tax consultant and author of Contemporary Issues on Taxation in Nigeria, and he's also the chairman of the Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria, Abuja District. Thank you so much.
Thank you
for
for
finding
having
time to join us.
Thank you, sir.
We expect to join us also on the program Umar Yakubu, who is the Executive Director, Fiscal Transparency and Integrity Watch. He should be joining us in the course of the program. Now, to kickstart our discussion on the issues, let's take a listen to this report by our correspondent, Yemi Adebayo.
The 2023 survey assessed 125 countries, accounting for 95% of the world's population, and included budgets totaling over $33.5 trillion in spending in the 2022 fiscal year. Despite a 24% global increase in transparency, Nigeria's performance declined from its 2021 scores of 45 in transparency, 26 in public participation, and 61 in institutional oversight. Budget attributed Nigeria's disappointing performance to the government's failure to promptly publish fiscal documents online and adopt innovative public participation practices. To address this, Budget, in a statement issued on Tuesday by its communications officer Nancy Odimegu, recommends that legislative committees thoroughly examine budget proposals and audit reports and publish their findings publicly. It also urged the government to publish fiscal documents promptly, expand engagement mechanisms during budget implementation, and involve vulnerable communities. Nigeria's country manager for the International Budget Partnership, Olayinka Babalola, emphasized the importance of the Open Budget Survey in generating discussion among citizens, government, and civil society organizations on how public finance systems can address the needs for everyone, especially the marginalized and vulnerable. Budget's Country Director Gabriel Okeowo urged the government to revive fiscal transparency, enhance public participation, and improve timeliness in publishing detailed budget documents. The 2023 Open Budget Survey highlights the need for accountable and inclusive public budgeting. Budget urged the Nigerian government to take immediate action to enhance fiscal transparency and accountability.
The Nigeria of our dream, the Nigeria we need, is the united, indissoluble, and cohesive Nigeria which guarantees equity, fairness, justice, and prosperity for its citizens. That is our focus on people, politics, and power. It is fresh, insightful, impactful. It's a must watch. People, politics, and power on AIT.
All right, thank you so much for staying with us. That report by our correspondent Yemi Adebayo captures the essence of the survey as conducted on budgeting and, of course, the transparency process for those budgets. And we have now been joined by Umar Yakubu, who is the Executive Director of Fiscal Transparency and Integrity Watch. Thank you so much for joining us. Yinka, let's begin this way. How important is this report?
It's extremely important. I think I should first of all set the context. So the Open Budget Survey is one of the flagship products of the International Budget Partnership. It's published biennially, and it's the longest running survey of this type around the world. It's the only survey of this type that is comparative, that compares performance across countries, and it's also independent. So in this year's survey, we had 125 countries participating in the exercise. And
is participation voluntary?
Oh, definitely.
Compulsory?
No, it's voluntary.
Okay.
So 125 countries participated. This is an exercise that we started as far back as 2006, and this was the 9th edition of the survey. And essentially in the survey, we look at 3 pillars, as you mentioned. We look at transparency, which looks at how available budget documents are made to the public, the timeliness of the availability of those documents, and then the comprehensiveness of the information contained in these documents. We look at 8 key documents related to the budget. Then we also look at public participation. That is the extent to which governments actually open formal spaces for citizens and civil society organizations to participate in the budget process from start to finish. That's from the budget preparation to the audit stage. And then we look at oversight. So when we talk about oversight, we're talking about legislative oversight. So those are the different committees of the National Assembly that tend to look at how budgets are prepared and implemented. And then we also look at audit oversight as well. So the countries answer 240 questions. There's an independent researcher that does this, usually somebody from civil society or academia. And then we also have like an independent peer review by an autonomous reviewer. And then we also invite government to also review the results of the survey to raise any questions, provide additional information. Now, why is it important? This is because we're talking about public resources, right? These are resources essentially that all Nigerians contribute to, either through our taxes or our contribution to the organizations we work with that declare profit that government now uses to provide goods and services to the citizens. And so what we're saying with this product is that everybody should be involved in this process, not just some people sitting back in government offices making decisions on behalf of all Nigerians. All Nigerians must be involved in the process, and to be able to do this, they need to have access to this information, and then there needs to be oversight of the entire process. So it's extremely important for all countries.
The question that would almost immediately arise is whether or not the three pillars, the criteria adopted by the organization is extensive enough, is large enough to cover every bit of budget. So, Soma.
Okay, yeah. Thank you for inviting me. Well, it's not extensive. It's that within the space, people play different roles, and the role that the IBP is playing is very critical because it's like the major pillar, enabling pillar. They are promoting the transparency. You know that when this budget comes out, other civil society actors can take, you know, some of the space. For example, I think budget are really deeply involved in the budgeting itself to check whether the details are correct and what they do. Our own center, we check about fiscal transparency as well to look at the effectiveness, and she talked about citizens' engagement. You know, the budget process is supposed to come from bottom up, not top from the top down, like we have seen recently in this coastal highway that we did. We just woke up one morning and we heard that they were doing a coastal highway. So what was the process that was followed, you know, in citizens' engagement that she was talking about, to say citizens, okay, do we need this coastal highway? For what reason do we need it? What are the economic benefits of this coastal highway? And you would have found that they would have been known for all the tension we have now. But back to what you were saying, there are several pillars. And you know, in our own index as well, we have the fiscal transparency. That's the Transparency and Integrity Index, which we have run for 4 years now. We have the fiscal transparency, but we go deeper, slightly deeper, coming from what they're coming from, to actually ensure that all MDAs, well, I'm talking about over 1,000 MDAs at the federal level, 36 state governments and 774 local governments, though there's nothing there, you know, to look at the level of transparency of the, we call them openly financials. Now there are budgets, the approved budget, the amount that was released, the amount that was expended, and the budget implementation report. These are all components of the budget, which I'm sure the IBP has it as well. So you continue going deeper and deeper, and of course you have the budget credibility and integrity. You know, what is the value of even those budgetings we have done? What do we get as a feedback? Okay, you have spent 10 billion on X amount. The last time I was here, I was spending 10 billion on a car park or so. Now, what is the benefit of spending 10 billion on a park? So these are all the issues that we all need to collaborate and take a deep dive. But I commend the work they have done and the report they have released on Nigeria, and it's a fair representation of what is actually true.
Dr. Wundu, in addition to asking you what you think of this survey, of this report, what do budgets really tell us?
Yeah, budget is just an expected revenue and expenditure of the government. A budget is expected to be transparent. There should be transparency in budget. They conducted the survey, and I think they were fair enough in their report. I took 3 things from their report. I've studied their report before I came here. One is the budget process. Is Nigeria getting the budget process right? 2 is the performance reports on those budgets. Are we seeing them? And 3 is the oversight. Are the oversights being done effectively? Let me go from the budget process. We have never gotten our budget process right. You remember in this studio, we watch where there's allegations and counter-allegations of budget padding. And it has trailed over the years. The worst is breaching the law. Over the years, the Nigerian government has breached the Fiscal Responsibility Act. The Fiscal Responsibility Act is the beginning of the budget process. And that act stipulates that the federal government should not borrow or run a deficit that is more than 3% of our GDP. In 2022 budget, we had 4.78% against the stipulated 3%. In 2023 budget, we have 5.3% against the 3% stipulated. Even in this 2024 budget, we are having about 3.9%. The last 3 years' budget, we are above the Fiscal Responsibility Act. And this is an act of National Assembly, it's a law. We expect when the president or the executive must have prepared this budget and present before National Assembly say, no, this is against the law. You must go and make sure, because that's the beginning of the process. So if you start getting it law, if there's infraction in your budget process, it means it's flawless. So this is number one, that's the area of budget process. Then number two, periodic report performance. We expect while we run, there should be quarterly reports, there should be mid-term reports, there should be yearly reports. So this is what we have budgeted, but this is what we have generated so far, and this is how we spent it. Nobody's seen those reports. So where lies the transparency? Where lies what would the media see to do their review? What would the citizens see to participate in the discussion? Nothing. Everything is being shrouded in secrecy. We expect performance reports on budget. It's not enough presenting budget, the president will sign it, everybody will happy and go home. From year to year, nobody is giving any performance report, no quarterly report, no mid-term report, no yearly report, no performance report on that budget. Then the last one is oversight. The National Assembly is supposed to have their primary responsibility of oversight on this. That's why they have House Committee on this, Senate Committee on this, on Finance, on this. Now, what are those committees doing? Are they really doing their jobs? We have a situation where the Auditor General of the Federation will present the reports of auditors carried out in all the MDAs and present before the National Assembly. Sometimes they will shout, and they will arrest this general manager of this MDA, the PEM secretary, come and answer these questions. And after that, everything goes quiet. Nobody hears anything. Nobody is being punished. Nobody is answering any query. And everybody is comfortable. I think they are fair in their report, if you ask me my perspective.
Now, clearly arising from that is what then is the responsibility of civil society.
Exactly.
When situations like this that you just described now arise, when audit reports raise alarms, and then the National Assembly makes some noise about it, and it goes dead.
Why it goes dead.
So what then is the responsibility of civil society in this regard?
The responsibility of civil society is to follow up. And they will follow up with the media to keep bringing these issues on board. And you know, sometimes when they keep quiet, the media finally keep quiet too. Sometimes they say 200 billion spent without evidence. 200 billion spent without approval. They say the National Assembly Committee have invited the MDA to come and answer. It will be in the flood. At a point, do we hear anything again? What is the duty of the oversight? What is the oversight? Because I expect that the oversight will recommend, if there's infractions, the oversight will recommend punishment. Those who are in the ministry, who are spending our money, if they do something wrong, they should be punished.
So the question is civil society like yours doing enough in this regard?
Yes, sir, in the sense that what we are doing, and I like the background he gave, our work is advocacy, putting pressure on the right places for them to do these things. Nobody likes to be ranked. Now, from our ranking, I want to assume the government will now say, okay, look at our score and we're not doing well, so we should improve. But drawing from what he's saying now, look, our ranking is, let's say, drawing from the Fiscal Responsibility Act, there's supposed to be a budget implementation report quarterly. We do those ranking and we send it to every MDA in this country. Every day, our center will do that. On the budget implementation report, we send them that, look, you have not implemented this budget. Now, we're not even assuming, we're not looking at the accountability aspect that you budgeted 10 billion for one ridiculous item. Just implement that, whatever you have even budgeted.
Which has been passed.
Yes, which has been passed. Yeah. Let's even forget the trading that has gone behind since we don't have evidence. Okay, you have passed it, just implement it and release it. So this is what we're doing. Like you said.
But you don't make it public. You only send it to the MDAs and the government departments.
We do, sir. Tomorrow at 1, we are inviting you. We are going to review, we have 611 grand corruption-related probes by the National Assembly from 1999 till date. And out of these 611, not one has been completed since 1999. So every time, like you said, they call for a meeting, oh, X amount has gotten missing, this, well, let's come, let's talk, invite the PAMSEC, invite the head of MD, they talk, but the report of the conclusion of those reports, we have not seen there. So we'll continue to do pressure, add pressure, continue our advocacy, and hope that they will respond. We're in a democracy, so we'll continue talking.
Yeah, Yinka, the report also states that the survey took place at a time of unprecedented challenges. And it talks about rising debt, inflation, conflicts, closing of civic space, and climate change.
Yes.
So how much of these unprecedented, as the survey, report calls it, challenges affected Nigeria's ranking?
Okay, first of all, I think I just need to provide some context to Nigeria's scores specifically. So, for example, on the transparency score, Nigeria declined from 45 in 2021 to 31 in 2023. Public participation, 26 to 19, while oversight remained stable. The
61.
reason, yeah, at 61. So the reason why I'm drawing attention to these scores is to say that, Nigeria had over time actually increased its performance. So in terms of the mid-year reports, the in-year reports, the audit report, or in fact, let me talk about the audit report because that's a special report. The mid-year and in-year reports, they were being put on government websites on time, and that was why those scores were at that level. Because for the OBS, it's an internationally relevant report, and so the standards we set are internationally accepted standards. For the mid-year report, the requirement is that 3 months after the end of after the middle of the year, the report should be available online. For the in-year reports, which in the case of Nigeria, quarterly, 3 months. I say this because our Fiscal Responsibility Act actually has more stringent guidelines, right? For the budget implementation report is a month after. For the, I think the end-year report, it's I think it's about 6 months or so, yes. And now, talking about the audit report, the latest audit report we actually have is for 2020. And the Fiscal Responsibility Act requires that it comes out 7 months after the end of the year. Meanwhile, for the OBS, the requirement is, I think, 12 to 18 months or so. And so you can see that,
So we don't even have for 2021 yet.
No, we have.
We don't have for 2022.
On the government website, no.
Yes.
The latest report, 2020, came out in February 2024. So first of all, to put that out there.
So there is a deficit 2 years.
More than 2.
Yes.
Yes, more than 3 years, because
3 years,
we
yes.
should expect by
21,
now.
22, 23.
Yes, that in a few months, the 24 should
Yes.
come out. Okay, and so in saying that, just to clarify where Nigeria exactly stands with the survey. Now, in terms of those unprecedented challenges, of course, it affected every country globally. So, for example, we found out that because of the COVID-19 crisis, a lot of rules around budgets were relaxed because there was a lot of emergency spending taking place. But then we also found out that, in particular, legislative oversight was affected because, there was this rush for the executive to get spending out. And so some of those oversight functions were not carried out the way that they should have been. In the case of Nigeria, what we find out is that although the legislative tends to hold hearings with the executive, the level of public participation is limited. It's not enough, for example, to call a hearing and then the general public is hearing about it the day before. They have no ability to contribute to the process. They're not able to even review what is going to be discussed. So essentially, they're just in the audience, listening to an exchange of information. And then, even in conducting that oversight, the legislative arm should actually provide reports to the public that this is what we have found, these are the actions that we are recommending. Same with the audit process. There's a need to always engage citizens to say, these are the findings of the audit report, and these are the actions that will be taken. And then over time, be able to report that, okay, we have had success in this area, these infractions or these irregularities have been corrected. So although there were crises globally, we found out that a lot of countries were still able to meet the minimum requirements set out in the survey, and Nigeria is not an exception. So although the environment is challenging, we still have to abide by these fiscal rules and laws to be able to account for public resources, to be transparent, to be open, and encourage citizen participation in the process. So it's not an excuse.
And the report also says that a third of countries globally
Yes.
do not even publish annual reports on their budgets.
Yes, yes, it's a
So that
global
becomes
problem.
a major
Yes.
global problem.
Yes.
What necessitates that? I mean, is it that the whole question of transparency
Yes.
is being ignored by countries all around the world?
Yes, so I think for me, the way I look at it is that a lot of governments, both the executive and legislative arm of government, they are not considering the management of public resources as a responsibility that they have been given to. Basically, they're managing the resources on our behalf. Because if they're looking at it from that perspective, there should be a desire, first of all, to involve us in the process, as we say in Nigerian parlance, to carry us along in the process. There will also be a desire to, solicit our opinion, because these are our resources that are being spent. But then, there's a tendency for government to think that it can take those decisions on our behalf, and not just the Nigerian government, governments globally. But the encouraging thing is that we see a lot of countries that are opening up more spaces for citizen participation and engagement. For example, in Tanzania, they involved civil society organizations in actually designing the government website where these resources, where these documents are published so that citizens can have access. And, I like what my colleague
Soma,
said.
yes.
The fact is that we are providing a tool for civil society to be able to engage. Essentially, we're putting these numbers and these scores out there so that civil society can use this as an advocacy tool. And we're not the only player in this space. There are different organizations that approach this from different angles. So referring to your question about how comprehensive the survey is. So even if there are aspects of the survey we do not cover, there are other civil society organizations that do cover
supposed
this.
to fill in the gaps,
Yes.
if there are any.
So for example, this survey focuses on central government spending. That's in the case of Nigeria, the federal government. And we know that a lot of spending, about more than 50% of spending happens at the subnational level.
I'm going to come to that because it's an issue.
Yes, so
Yeah.
unfortunately, given the scope of the survey, we cannot go to the subnational level. But for example, in the case of Nigeria, we have found that civil society organizations have taken up this responsibility, used our methodology to prepare a subnational report using a similar scoring pattern, and then even Budget. Budget is a technical partner that works with us on this survey and on other issues. They also publish a state-of-state report that goes deep into subnational spending. So this is a collaborative effort. IBP is not the only organization working in this space. There are other organizations, and with our collective efforts, we hope to improve
So beyond
transparency.
Budget, is IPB thinking of bringing in a number of other civil society groups, like his, for instance, as technical partners, to give you more insight into what actually goes on with budgeting and budget implementation and oversight in Nigeria?
Of course, there's scope for that. So we work with civil society organizations at very different levels. So even in our program implementation that also looks at strengthening the capacity of social movements to advocate on their behalf, we work with a large number of civil society organizations. So even if it's not with respect to the survey, we work with different organizations when it comes to improving budget advocacy efforts across the country.
Dr. Iwundu, let's talk about a bit more about public engagement, public participation. The expectation is that the engagements should be at both executive, legislative, and even institutional oversight and what do you call it, audit institutions. Yeah. How much of that happens? Because all that we have is public engagement during public hearings of some of these budgeting process. We hardly hear of situations where there is a public engagement with executive bodies before budgets are submitted. So, in other words, unlike what happens in Tanzania, for instance, here in Nigeria, budgets, I think, is the envelope system that we run, there's no room for public engagement and participation to make impulse to say, these communities to say, this is what we
need,
want.
exactly.
This is what we desire
Exactly.
to see in the budget of 2024 or 2025, as the case may be. So how do we bring that to bear?
Yeah, the truth of the matter is that our leaders feel that the people don't matter. They do things on their own and believe, just as she said, they feel they can handle it for us. They feel they can run it for the people. Just as you're saying, if you get to the villages, especially the local government today, so many things are lacking. So many people in the rural areas don't have water. The roads are bad, the erosions have washed up some places. They don't have good, healthcare system, primary healthcare systems. They don't have even the primary education at that level. Some schools are dilapidated. So this is where you are supposed to build your budget from. You put these things into the budget. The communities, because people are staying in the villages. That's why we are advocating for the local government system to work. Right now, the local government system is not working. They are being hijacked by the governors. And the governors prepare this budget, give to the state assembly, they approve for them, and they spend the way they like. So until we have that system where we carry the rural dwellers, we carry people along, where whatever you are budgeting must be people-based. It must be based on the needs of the people. There are some places they will go and mount solar light panels all through. Maybe their problem is not solar light panel. Their problem will not be solar light panel. The last year, I went to my local government. We drove kilometers across the local government, even entered another local government. There was no effective primary health care facilities. And people die because there is no effective primary health care facilities. So I feel the need for those our leaders to make the budget to be rooted, to be home based. Take along all the people, like a governor, for example, in your state, you may have 27 local governments, for example. You need to find out the needs of people from these 27 local governments for you to form your budget. And just as she said, the budget, the International Budget Partnership in their open budget survey concentrated at the federal level. Mm-hmm. I would like them to go down to the state and see that the federal system is even a cent. You will agree that when you go down to the state, you can see that the federal government is even a cent in the hands of the state government. I don't know whether there's even a budget in, even there's anything called budget. There's budget in states, but that budget was just like we call it the budget. We were even in a situation where a governor was presenting a budget in the state assembly. Right there, they approved it. Without even looking at the document.
That was recent, yes.
The governor, they approved it instantly. Without even carrying their own oversight to check, is this budget, how do we go about it? Is it really what our people want? Is it in line with what budget is all about? So the survey, I will appeal to the International Budget Partnership to go down to the states and get information. The federal government is even a cent. And the reason why this has to be done is that in revenue sharing formula, let's use VAT revenue. Let's talk about VAT, company income tax revenue, value-added tax revenue, stamp duty revenue. The federal government take a little chunk, 15%. The rest of the 85% goes to the state and local government. So the survey you have already carried out is 50% survey. The bulk of the revenue generated today goes to the states, the 36 states, and the 774 local governments we have in Nigeria. Federal government only take about 15% of whatever is generated in tax revenue. The rest of the money goes to the state. And unfortunately, Nigerians, we don't look at state again. Everybody focuses on federal government. Even people in their local government, their state, criticize the federal government, call the president names, but nobody is asking the governor
or the local government chairman.
What are you doing? The attention is on federal government, federal government, federal government. And that's why there's need for restructuring this country. There's need for fiscal federalism. So that people will know that I don't even need to ask the president. I need to ask the local government chairman what is going on in this local government. We are not getting the dividend of democracy.
So, Ms. Ruma, do you think that a paradigm shift in this regard is possible where, for instance, like what obtains in a country like Kenya, where the local people see their representatives, their local representatives as the duty bearers, that they must make input into whatever they are planning for their communities, and not the other way around, where it is imposed on them? Can we have that kind of paradigm shift in the kind of system, in the kind of federal system that we're on today?
Well, legally, we actually have it. Legally speaking, everybody cannot be in Abuja. Everybody cannot be in the state capital of his state. That is why we have senators and House of Reps to come and represent us in Abuja. At the state level, we have the state assembly members to represent us in the capital city. At the local government level, we have the councillors to represent us in our local government. So the legal and political structure is there. Now, the problem or the crisis we have are two. One, that of disengagement. Our citizens are disengaged. So disengaged, they usually react to sensationalism. When they hear 10 billion is missing, 20 billion is missing, they are not looking at, okay, 50 billion has come to my local government. What's the local government chairman going to use it for? They are more interested in what the president is doing or is not doing. They will not even take a step to look at what the governor is doing. Nobody's interested at the local government level. Now, I can't explain why. Why we're so disengaged there. Our last index report, last I was in your studio, the transparency level at the local government level is at most, at best, 5%. I don't want to say zero because we're on TV, but it's zero. And that's why there's no way you should go and devolve resources where you are going to get a zero result. For the states, the reason why you even see some degree of transparency is because it's sometimes a criteria for World Bank loans and all these IMF loans, where they tell you, okay, before you access ABC loan, you must at least release your budget, your tax, your IGR, your tax, all those things. Now, SIFTAS has ended because there was one world program that has ended. Since SIFTAS left last year or 2 years ago, the transparency has dropped since they are done with the loans. So the only way to stir up these things is, like I said, two things: to engage the citizens to be more interested. And then, of course, we have to fix our political system. Because as long as we continue having a system of politics that is so money-induced, and most of this money is coming from public sector corruption, is people are taking money, financing their political structure and machinery and getting into governance, we are going to continue having these problems over and over and over again. So these are just the two things we need to do. That is why you find that it's so expensive to even become a local government chairman now. So expensive. To become a governor, any state, I'm sure you need at least R1 billion for any state.
6 billion.
6 billion, depending on the city you're coming from. That's the minimum. For presidency, and you have the INEC that is supposed to be regulating all these things, and they're not doing their job because it's electoral financing. So until we fix these two things, the citizens' engagement, which is what everybody here is doing, and fixing our electoral system, we're going to continue having this cycle of poor budget performance at all, at the national level and the subnational level.
This OBS survey or assessment has been said is limited to the federal budget as of now. And Dr. Wundu is saying perhaps we should drive it down to the subnationals, to the states. Is there a possibility that the IPB would be able to do that at some time? You might be able to migrate it from the federal to the subnationals, that's to the state levels, and see how that is panning out at that level.
Okay, I think the way I'll approach that question is to maybe tell you more about what IBP is doing at the subnational level. So essentially, what we try to do, our tagline is that we try to make the public budget work for everybody, especially marginalized communities. And we do that through several programs. And this is why I actually have some hope. And I'm not totally convinced that citizens are completely disengaged. So for example, we have a program called SPARK, that's Strengthening Public Accountability for Results and Knowledge, where we work with community-based organizations, social movements that basically have congregated around an issue, and then we work with them to improve their capacity to analyze the budget. Because we found out that when we do that, it actually improves their advocacy efforts. So for example, we've worked with an organization called SWAFON, that's Smallholder Women Farmers Organization of Nigeria. We're currently working with Form 1, the Federation of Muslim Women's Association of Nigeria, Ogun Women for Maternal Health, several organizations to advocate on issues around maternal health care on one hand, and then the needs of smallholder women farmers. So for example, SWAFON has very successfully advocated for increased spending for gender-friendly farm equipment, for greater allocation of seeds and inputs for farming activities. And so we've seen that happen in several states where we work. We also do budget credibility work. I think you mentioned that, where we look at what was budgeted and then what was actually spent. Because I think the interesting thing about Nigeria is that we talk about limited resources, but then at the end of the fiscal year, a lot of money is not spent and is returned to the treasury. So there are a lot of inefficiencies in the way either the revenues are raised and spent, the cash management practices are not working the way they should. And so that's affecting what's happening on the service delivery end. We also do work on tax equity. We have a project about strengthening tax equity. We are working in 3 states in Nigeria, where essentially we're also working with organizations that are, that are interested in those issues. The Society for Women in Taxation in Nigeria, the Association of Nigerian Women Business Network. And so this issue of multiple taxation, for example, is one of the critical things they're addressing. The issue of tax expenditures, where a lot of, let's say, people, let me just call them people in the elite, receive exemptions and waivers, right, to be able to retain their earnings and not pay taxes on those. And, it affects the bottom line in the sense of the resources available for spending. Absolutely. So there are a lot of efforts going on in that area. So for example, this issue of tax, even the work going on with the Presidential Committee, you have civil society organizations like these two I've mentioned and others that are also engaged in the process. We also work with the Tax Governance and Justice Platform, variety of organizations. So there's actually a lot of activity happening in the civil society space. There are groups that maybe they focus specifically on audit and they engage with actors within the audit space. There are groups that focus on the budget. So there's a variety of organizations working in that
all of
space.
this making the desired impact? All these organizations and activities that you mentioned, are they making the desired impact?
I would say
are
to
there
a certain
changes
degree,
that
yes.
that are noticeable?
There are certain changes. So first of all, we're now having greater citizen engagement. So for example, working with SWAFON, which is a Smallholder Women Farmers Organization, the former president now sits on a budget committee in her state because of her knowledge and experience. There's increased knowledge. You see these women farmers, when they start talking about the budget, honestly, you'll be amazed at the level of their knowledge. And then what we also do is we also try to increase their entry into spaces where decisions are being made so that they can actually be involved in the process. So right now, the budget cycle is starting in many states. So already we're working with technical partners to provide them knowledge where they've already pulled out details from the budget, that this is what is in the budget for this specific issue you're interested in. This is what should be allocated so that when they go into those spaces, they're coming from a place of knowledge. And when they come from a place of knowledge, you find out that government is listening to them. Now, of course, we're just one organization. So I think what we would like is for others to get involved in raising this awareness at the level of citizens, because unless we do that, transparency doesn't always come automatically. Sometimes we actually have to demand for it, and it's good to do that from a place of knowledge.
Dr. Ewundu, let's try and relate this to the ongoing wage negotiations, for instance. Many of the, in fact, all the state governors are saying, look, 60,000 we cannot pay. Yet they are getting a lot more. In fact, in some cases, double what they used to get from the federation accounts.
It's about transparency and the effective management of the resources. But I want to appeal to her because I'm very, very interested in their job. A Society of Women in Taxation is our wing. The Chartered Institute. There's a program they organized, which I was there.
And I was there as well. I remember, I saw you there. Yes.
Thank you. So they are doing very well. So I want them to not just focus on the central government. They should go down to the state.
Yes.
They may not have the resources to run the 36 states of the federation.
Why didn't the states actually? I
Yeah.
don't want to interrupt.
Yes, if you don't have resources to run the whole 36 states, you can do on geopolitical zone. You can choose 6 states from the 6. You can go to southeast and pick a state. Go to north central, pick a state. Go to southwest. That 6 states, the report on the 6 states will go a long way to beam a light of what the state government are doing when it comes to this budget transparency. I will encourage, I know there's limitation in resources, but they can do that just to ensure that at that level, we have more transparency. Because let me tell you the truth, so many state governments don't care. And one of the challenges Nigeria is facing today is that the states are not working. The states are not working. If the states are working effectively, poverty will be eradicated. Federal government cannot do everything alone. How many people are in Abuja, for example? Federal government cannot do it alone. When you have the 36 states government working, 774 local government working, Nigeria will be fine. People think that Nigeria will only be fine when the federal government work. That is not true. That is absolutely lie. So there's a need for them to beam their search of this open budget survey by the International Budget Project at the state level. Let us know what is going on there. That is number one. Then number two, there's need for us to also understand the pattern of the state government expenditure. Just as you said, many governors say they can't pay 60,000 minimum wage. Recall that even when we had that 30,000 minimum wage, many states couldn't pay. But the
Still have not paid.
Exactly. The question we are asking is that if a Edo state can pay 70,000 minimum wage, can we have the ranks, other states that have similar revenue, and ask them why can't they pay? If a Edo state, and it is implemented, paying 70,000, then let us know the number of states that cannot pay 70,000, 60,000. And again, one of the reasons why the states cannot pay is that some of the expenditures are artificial expenditures. They are superficial and ostentatious. You go to a government house, they kill cow every day. You remember when Peter B was the governor? He said he stops all those nonsense. And throughout the period he was the governor, he didn't borrow any money. He handed over a lot of money to the successor. So the state government need to cut down. Okay, some of them will say we don't have money, but they take billions out from the poor, say security votes. And in Nigeria is a place where you don't ask governor what he does with the security votes. There's a report there that about 900 something billion has been spent by governors' entertainment.
Recurrent expenditure.
On recurrent expenditure. So there's need on that. You see, let me tell you, the corruption in Nigeria, you have to get it right where you have budget transparency. If you don't have budget transparency, both at national and state level, forget about, we are just talking about corruption in Nigeria. So there's need for the state governments to show us their income and expenditure, their revenue and expenditure. Let us know whether they can pay the 60,000 minimum wage. I've made so many recommendations here. I say, can't we pass a law in this country where states will be publishing their revenue and expenditure on monthly or quarterly basis? Every month you say, this is federal allocation, internal generated revenue, other sources, total. And you show us salary payment, capital expenditure, recurrent, how you did with it. You run it for, let us see, because there's a law that if a public limited company must publish its annual reports on a daily newspaper, then why wouldn't we have a law where state government, we published their income, their revenue and expenditure in the daily newspaper? That is a transparency.
At least we know what the allocation is.
Exactly.
We are told on a monthly basis how much a state is getting.
It's getting.
So states should be able to say, this is how we expended what we got from federation account, from our own IGRO and other sources. But, Mr. Omar,
yes, sir.
What do you think would be the larger implication of this ranking, this 92nd position that Nigeria has been placed now, for the larger economy? For instance, for foreign direct investment, international development partners and financials' attitude towards the Nigerian government.
Okay. I'll answer that question in line with the last question you asked him, because I wanted to clarify some things. Already, let's not forget, Nigeria as a country is a signatory to the United Nations Convention Against Corruption. Now, what happens is once you're a signatory, you are supposed to comply with all the articles. Now, under preventive mechanism, open budget is there, clearly. Yeah. And when you break down to the sub variables there, your budget, how much you are generating from whether you are borrowing or you are taxing, how much you are expending is supposed to be there. Then your budget implementation report is clear. That's very clear. Article 6, public sector, Article 7, or down to Article 8. Now, what is asking for? Our center, maybe we're not doing lots of advocacy, we're already doing it for the subnational level. They have done the country survey. We are doing every MDA survey. For the last 4 years, the minimum we have done in a year is 600 federal government institutions. They will go to state government, we'll do all the state governments. They will go to the local government, we'll do all the 774, which I told you we don't even get anything there anyway, so there's really nothing to publish. That's just the truth. But we are doing them. On the budget alone, we have 8 sub-variables of the things we ask for to be published every year. And you know, it's a strict liability thing. It's either you have it on your website or you don't have it. So there's nothing to just worry about. So I'll give you, it's in the public domain. Maybe we need to do more advocacy for people. We've been doing it for, every September, in every year of September, which is the UN United Nations Day for Universal Access to Information, we release that report every year, you know, for the federal and subnational level. So that is already done, and I've already told you it's very poor. There's improvement, especially at the federal level. There's a lot of improvement. And I say government, some are doing well too. Ekiti have always been doing well, some are doing well. So that is already there. So for the implications, you can't go as a country. You sign to the convention, to the United Nations Convention Against Corruption. You go and sign up to the OGP Action Plan. That's Open Governance Partnership. You have signed that everything will be open. You have gone to the UK Anti-Corruption Summit 2016. You go and sign. You go, of course, what we call the Financial Action Task Force. These have to do with money laundering. You go and sign. You are a signatory there to the Egmont Group. Egmont Group is a group of financial institutions where they will not even give you access to information if you are not complying with certain criteria. Yeah. So naturally, when you have signed to all these international instruments, you don't need to pass any law. It will be a distraction and a waste of time. You already have to implement them. So when you don't implement them, there are consequences there that happen. One, when we have been looking for money, the president has been traveling around looking for money for foreign investors. The first thing they look at is these rankings. They start looking. Okay, we don't have confidence because you are not open. And openness, transparency is the major pillar for accountability. Transparency is just make everything open. We're not saying everything is correct. Exactly. But once everything is open, it will not trigger accountability mechanisms. Exactly. You know? So we have not even been open yet before even the accountability starts.
There's a loss of confidence ab initio.
Yes.
Of course, there.
All right. So we're a long way, we're far away. That is on the foreign direct investment. Even when you are applying for loans, all these things matter. So if you know you are not ready, do go and be signing to those conventions. But you know, we like traveling and signing things. As we sign them, we don't understand their implications coming up to all these things. So that is just...
We observe them in their breach.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much, Mr. Umar.
Thank you.
Umar Yakubu is Executive Director, Fiscal Transparency and Integrity Watch. Yes. Thank you for your time.
Thank you,
and of course, Dr. Kennedy Iwundu, a tax consultant and author of Contemporary Issues on Taxation in Nigeria. I think you launched the part 2 of that publication just on Saturday. Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
He's also the chairman of the Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria, the Abuja district. Welcome.
Thank you, sir.
And Yinka Babalola is a country manager, International Budget Partnership, Nigeria. Thank you, Yinka, for coming on the program.
Thank you very much.
All right, that's our program for today. Please join us again when we bring you a fresh edition of People, Politics, and Power. Bye for now.